Here is my recipe for steamed rice cake, otherwise known as bak tongo. So in a moment I'm going to show you the measurements. There you go. Pause it there if you want to write down the measurements. But along the way I'll be telling you how much of everything to put in, so you don't have to worry if you don't write it down. Firstly, into the saucepan goes some water. There's 400 ml of water. I like to use a scale just because it's a bit more accurate. There we go. Oh, a bit over, doesn't matter. Close enough. Alright, then I'm going to add in the sugar, 150 grams of sugar. Make sure you reset that. There we go. Then I'm going to add in the rice flour, reset, and then add in the rice flour. So I need 200 grams of rice flour. Now, once you've put in your rice flour, you're going to use your whisk and whisk it through, making sure there are no lumps at all. Now, the reason why I'm doing this straight into the saucepan is because that's going to go on the stove. Here we go, 200. So now it's all smooth and clump free. I'm going to pop it straight onto the stove on a sort of medium-ish sized heat, and I'm going to cook that for 2 minutes. So keep stirring, make sure you always keep stirring so that it doesn't get lumpy. Now once the 2 minutes is up, I'm going to lower the heat completely and cook it for another 4 minutes. So this part is a little bit tedious. So for 4 minutes. Now make sure you're constantly stirring. And then once those 4 minutes are up, I'm going to take it off that heat and put it onto an even smaller heat and stir that through for 1 minute. Now if at any point it starts to get lumpy and you can feel the bottom is thickening up, you can take it off the stove, stir it through so that there's no more lumps, and then put it back on the heat for whatever remaining time you have. The most important thing is that it's as lump free as possible. So see how mine is still a pretty runny consistency, very watery. That's how you want it. You only want it to thicken ever so slightly. And I think at this point I can feel the corners are starting to get lumpy, so that's when you take it off, stir it through, and then pop it back on the stove. Now, once that is done, pour it through a sieve. See how easily it goes through? That's the ideal texture that you want. It should run through the sieve pretty easily. And thankfully we did that because there's still a few lumps left in there. Now I've measured 1 tablespoon of warm water, not hot, because hot will kill the yeast. So 1 tablespoon of warm water and 3/4 of a teaspoon of yeast. Let that sit covered for about 10 minutes. Just make sure all the yeast is covered in water. I wouldn't swirl it around that much. So now that it's all bubbly and it's sat for 10 minutes, I'm going to pour it all into my rice flour mixture. Now, if it hasn't bubbled, and if you haven't got that sort of yeasty texture, then your yeast might be too old, or maybe your water wasn't warm enough, or it was too hot. So you'll just have to do it again. So mix that all in until it's incorporated, and then you're going to let your batter sit, cover it, let it sit for about 6 hours until it has risen. There you go. So now that your batter is risen, pour it into a tray or a tin. I use this tin in particular because I don't have to grease it. If you use a regular bowl, you might need to grease it a little bit, not too much. Now make sure your steamer has already been boiling before you pop it in. And then pop it in for 20 minutes, let it steam. and hopefully it should look something like this. Ideally it would have doubled in size. Now take it out of the steamer, let it cool down for a good hour or two so that you can cut it and enjoy. Now it should look airy and fluffy on the inside like so. So give this recipe a go and let me know how it goes. Bye!